The ground trembled as Captain Orion, Bull, Graves sprinted through the debris-strewn streets of what was once a thriving human city. Smoke billowed from collapsed buildings, filling the air with a thick, acrid haze. The faint sound of distant explosions reverberated through his helmet, but Graves barely noticed. He was focused, his senses sharp, his mind calculating his next move. The enemy was closing in, but there was no time to waste. This mission wasn't just about survival. It was about vengeance. The Syndar were relentless, brutal, and everywhere. The alien empire had invaded Earth without mercy, slaughtering civilians and wiping out any resistance. Graves' squad had already been decimated in earlier battles, but he wasn't about to let humanity fall, not while he still drew breath. Graves adjusted the strap of his assault rifle, the weight of the weapon a familiar comfort. His power armor, scratched and battered from previous engagements, was heavy, but it protected him, made him feel invincible. The sound of his boots pounding against the cracked pavement was drowned out by the constant roar of war. The Syndar were closing in. He could feel their presence, their cold, calculating hatred for humanity. "Graves," came the voice of Lieutenant Lawson through his comms. "Where the hell are you?" Graves' lips curled into a thin smile. Lawson always had a way of making him feel like the one with the most responsibility, even in the middle of hell. "I'm on my way to the front, Lieutenant." "You better have those reinforcements ready," he replied, his voice low but confident. "Don't worry, sir," Lawson shot back. "You just focus on holding the line. We're coming." Graves didn't respond. He didn't need to. The situation spoke for itself. The remnants of humanity's last stronghold were buckling under the Syndar's assault. If they couldn't push back now, they would lose everything. Earth would fall, and with it, any hope of humanity reclaiming its place in the galaxy. The streets were littered with the broken remnants of the last human defense, charred vehicles, scattered bodies, and the smoldering husks of destroyed fortifications. Graves moved quickly, using the wreckage for cover, his mind racing through strategies and contingencies. There was no time to think too far ahead. His orders were clear: eliminate the Syndar's forward command, disrupt their supply lines, and buy enough time for the last of humanity's forces to regroup. Simple enough. But this wasn't just about completing a mission. This was personal. The Syndar had killed his family. His entire colony. Graves' fingers twitched around his rifle as he thought about the invasion, the merciless slaughter, the endless days spent fighting for survival. His comrades, his brothers and sisters in arms, had died beside him. He'd seen too much destruction to count. Every battle had hardened him, but it had also scarred him. Yet there was no room for grief, not now. He reached the outer edges of the city, where the ruins became more sparse, the broken roads giving way to a large open square. Graves crouched low, using the ruined buildings for cover, peering into the center of the square. Through the scope of his rifle, he could see them, the Syndar's heavy shock troops, their towering forms unmistakable even from a distance. Their hulking exoskeletons gleamed in the harsh sunlight, and their weapons were trained on the last remnants of a human resistance group, cornered and fighting for their lives. Graves' heart rate picked up, but his face remained calm, the eyes behind his helmet narrowing as he assessed the scene. This was it. His target was in sight. "Graves, do you copy?" Lawson's voice again, crackling through the comms. "I've got eyes on the target," Graves said, his voice low. "Tell the others to stay back. I'm going in." He didn't wait for a response. Graves' pulse quickened as he took off toward the square, moving fast but silently, his heavy boots making no noise on the cracked pavement. His helmet's heads-up display highlighted key points of entry, and the faint hum of his suit's systems kept him in the zone. Time slowed as he crossed the threshold into the square. The Syndar troops hadn't noticed him yet. Graves ducked behind a crumbling column, taking a breath before he peeked around the corner. He couldn't afford to make a mistake. His eyes locked onto the Syndar commander, a towering figure encased in the same heavy armor as the rest of his squad. Gar. Graves had fought him before, brutal, merciless, and seemingly invincible. But Graves had something Gar didn't: human resolve. And that was all he needed. The first shot rang out, cutting through the air like a whip. The blast hit one of the Syndar shock troops square in the chest, sending the alien crashing to the ground. Gar turned just in time to see the smoke trail from Graves' rifle, his eyes narrowing behind his helmet. Asterisk human, asterisk. Gar's voice boomed, reverberating through the square. You think you can challenge me? You are nothing. Your planet is nothing. Graves didn't flinch. He fired again, taking down another Syndar. You're right. We're nothing, he said, voice tight with cold fury. But I'm not here for your opinion. He moved again, his movements fluid, lethal, as he took out another enemy with a headshot. The remaining Syndar were scrambling now, trying to regroup, but it was too late. Graves was already upon them, his combat instincts taking over. The battlefield became a blur as he moved through the chaos, cutting through the Syndar ranks with brutal efficiency. Gar was still standing, roaring in frustration, trying to rally his troops. But Graves wasn't interested in the Syndar's commander anymore. He had one goal in mind: take out the command structure, destroy the enemy's ability to coordinate, and then leave them in disarray. Gar's eyes locked onto Graves, fury and disbelief burning in his gaze. You will regret this, human. Graves' lip curled into a smile. I don't think you'll be around to see it. With a final shot, Graves took down the last of the Syndar shock troops in the square. Gar hesitated, his weapon still raised, but the defeat in his eyes was clear. He had underestimated humanity. And now, he was paying the price. Graves took a moment to catch his breath, scanning the area. The fight was far from over, but he had done his part. The Syndar were in chaos. Their command structure had been severed, and for the first time in a long while, Graves felt the weight of the war's shift. He glanced up at the sky, the distant sound of more explosions filling the air. The battle wasn't won yet, but this was the catalyst. A single strike that would ignite the flame of resistance across the planet. Graves. Lawson's voice came through again, this time with urgency. We've got a bigger problem. More ships are entering orbit. Syndar reinforcements are coming in. It's not over. Graves straightened, his jaw setting with determination. Then we'll fight. We always fight. And for the first time in a long while, Graves believed they might actually win. The war for Earth was just beginning. Graves didn't have time to process the enormity of the situation. The battle had escalated far beyond what he could have predicted. The ships overhead were no longer just a threat, they were a harbinger of something even worse. As his mind raced, the sound of gunfire and explosions filled the air, the chaos of the battlefield surging around him. Captain, we need to fall back! Lieutenant Lawson's voice crackled through the comms, panic creeping in. The Syndar are regrouping. We can't hold this position much longer. Graves glanced up, scanning the skies. The new ships, sleek, dark, and ominous, were positioning themselves above the city. Their firepower was unlike anything humanity had faced before. The Syndar's forces were retreating, not because they were defeated, but because something far worse had arrived. Negative, Graves snapped, shaking his head. We're not retreating. Not until we know what we're up against. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing on him. His team was battered, and his supplies were running low. But he wasn't about to leave humanity's last stand to fate. Not when the enemy, whoever they were, was making their move. The streets were a war zone. Graves pushed forward, moving with a mix of practiced precision and desperation. His team was spread thin, securing positions, eliminating stragglers, and preventing a full collapse of their defenses. Every step, every corner, every flicker of movement in the rubble could be the end. Graves had seen it too many times before, but this felt different. The stakes were higher. Captain, we've got movement. Sergeant Trent's voice came through. Something's coming from the east. Large formations. More Syndar? Graves didn't wait for an answer. Check it out. But be cautious. We don't know what else is out there. His steps quickened, his helmet's visor flicking through tactical data. It was all wrong. The enemy's tactics were too coordinated, too precise. And now, with these unknown ships arriving, the whole battle felt like it was slipping from his control. As Graves moved through the wreckage, he caught sight of the Syndar leader, Gar, still standing in the chaos, barking orders to his remaining troops. His massive form was hard to miss, a towering figure in alien armor, his grin wide and mocking as if the battle were already won. The thought of facing him again sent a pulse of anger through Graves. Gar had been the one to push humanity to this breaking point. But now, he was just a pawn. A decoy for the true enemy. "Captain, we've got contact." Lawson's voice came through again. "It's not Syndar. Something else. They're different." Graves' heart skipped. "What do you mean different?" "They're human-sized. But their armor is sleek, like nothing we've seen before. They're moving fast, organized. Not Syndar forces. And they're not even shooting. Just gathering." The radio cut off. Graves' stomach churned. Whoever these new enemies were, they weren't acting like regular invaders. They were hunting, not killing. The stakes had just shifted. "Hold tight," Graves shouted over the comms. "We're not letting up yet. Stay sharp." He didn't want to admit it, but his soldiers were starting to doubt him. Their defenses were crumbling, their ammo running low. The new enemy's silence unnerved him. No shouting, no explosions, just the sound of their boots crunching against the broken streets. It was almost calculated. Then, as if on cue, the ground trembled beneath their feet. The ships in the sky, those sleek, ominous figures, descended lower. The shadows they cast felt suffocating. And as the dust settled, Graves' worst fear materialized. They had come. The unknown enemy. They emerged from the shadows of the alien wreckage, clad in dark, angular armor that reflected the harsh light of the explosions. They stood tall, their eyes hidden behind dark visors. The air crackled with tension, and the ground seemed to pulse with every movement they made. "What the hell is that?" Graves muttered, his hand instinctively reaching for his rifle. The new arrival stood still, scanning the battlefield, but not engaging. The lack of immediate aggression was disorienting. They didn't shoot. They didn't advance. They simply watched, waiting. Then, as if they had been waiting for this very moment, one of them moved forward, a figure stepping away from the group. The armor was different from the others. Sleeker, more refined. And as it drew closer, Graves could see the cold glint of metallic eyes under the helmet's visor. "Who are you?" Graves demanded, voice steady but edged with suspicion. The figure said nothing, its hand reaching up to remove its helmet. The face that emerged was eerily human, with sharp, angular features and pale, near-translucent skin. It looked like nothing Graves had ever seen, no alien, no soldier, just a ghost of something that shouldn't be. The figure's voice was low, a calm whisper amid the chaos. "Asterisk, you've awakened us. Asterisk." Graves' hand tightened on his rifle. "We've been fighting for survival." "Who the hell are you two?" The figure cut him off. "Asterisk, we are not your enemies. Asterisk." There was a long pause, a beat of silence that stretched like an eternity. "Asterisk, you are not alone in this war. The Syndar are pawns. We are here to change the game, Asterisk." Graves' mind raced. What the hell was going on? This new presence wasn't just a foreign invader, it was something much deeper, more intricate. The figure's eyes glowed faintly. "Asterisk, you were never meant to be destroyed. Humanity's true place in the galaxy was always known, Asterisk." Graves blinked, his disbelief turning to cold realization. "What do you want from us?" The figure's lips curled into something like a smile. "Asterisk, to free you, Asterisk." A blast from one of the Syndar warships overhead rattled the moment, but the strange figure didn't even flinch. The battlefield had shifted. No longer were they facing just the Syndar, but a force that had been waiting, biding its time. This was bigger than Graves could comprehend, a tangled web of lies and forgotten truths. And as the figure spoke again, its voice carrying an otherworldly power, Graves felt the ground shift beneath his feet. "Asterisk, prepare yourself, human. You will soon learn the truth. This battle is only the beginning, Asterisk." Suddenly, the battlefield was no longer just a fight for survival. It was a fight for everything humanity had never known about its past and its future. Graves didn't know what the figure meant, but one thing was certain: this war wasn't just about the Syndar anymore. It was about to get a hell of a lot bigger. "Get ready, people," Graves growled, gripping his rifle. "We're not backing down. Not ever." The tide had turned, and he was about to dive headfirst into the storm. The battlefield had turned into a tangled mess of dust, fire, and confusion. Graves' boots pounded against the cracked, scorched earth as he raced toward the center of the chaos, his mind a storm of thoughts. The unknown enemy, whoever they were, had brought an unsettling stillness to the fight. The Syndar's retreat had left a gaping hole, and now, the true threat loomed above them like a shadow. "Captain?" Sergeant Lawson's voice crackled through the comms, sharp and urgent. "We've got incoming. Looks like their reinforcements are— wait, scratch that. Asterisk, they're just standing there, star dot." Graves didn't have time for confusion. The sky was alive with fire as Syndar's ships continued to strafe the battlefield, but those strange new forces, human-shaped but far from human, were simply watching. Watching everything, as if calculating, observing, waiting for something to happen. They didn't fire. They didn't advance. They just stood in eerie silence. "What the hell is this?" Graves muttered, eyes darting between the alien craft overhead and the unmoving figures on the ground. There was something unnerving about their stillness, like they were waiting for something, and it sent a chill crawling down his spine. "You don't want to know, sir," Lawson replied grimly. "I've seen these guys in the intel files. We were supposed to destroy every trace of them. They—" "I know." Graves cut him off, his voice low and sharp. His mind was already turning. These weren't just any invaders. These were the ones pulling the strings. The ones that had been watching humanity, waiting for the right moment to intervene. He reached the edge of the command center's remains, crouching behind a shattered pillar to survey the situation. His squad was scattered, but they weren't out of the fight yet. Graves needed to act quickly. Every minute they spent watching these silent figures was another minute they wasted. And humanity didn't have time to waste. "Lawson, get everyone in position. We're pushing forward." Graves didn't wait for a reply. He moved, his body a machine trained for war, calculating the angles, assessing every risk. His mind didn't even flinch as he approached the line of sight between the Syndar and the new alien force. He didn't hesitate when he saw Kar, the Syndar commander, standing at the heart of his troops. The giant alien was roaring orders to his men, unaware of Graves' presence. The heavy, brutish body armor Kar wore gleamed under the intermittent explosions, and Graves could see that the Syndar were rallying again. They thought they had won. They were wrong. Graves didn't speak. He didn't need to. His rifle was already raised, and with pinpoint precision, he fired. Kar's soldiers fell one by one, bodies dropping to the ground like ragdolls. The Syndar leader spun, his eyes burning with fury as he saw his forces falling apart. "Graves!" Kar bellowed. "You think you can stop us? You're nothing but ants. I'll crush you and your pathetic world beneath my heel." Graves' eyes narrowed. The fight had just begun. The sound of more ships breaking through the atmosphere filled the air as additional Syndar reinforcements dropped from the sky. This wasn't just an invasion. This was a war of attrition, a war where they would throw everything they had at humanity. But Graves had a plan. The Tarka protocol wasn't just a warning. It was a key. Graves crouched down behind cover, shifting his rifle into the tactical mode. His helmet's visor flickered as his targeting system adjusted, and a series of options appeared in front of him. This was his moment. The Syndar were distracted, and now he could strike. But then something changed. The strange new figures, the ones that had been watching, moved. With fluid grace, they stepped forward as a group, closing ranks as they raised their weapons in unison. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light. They were communicating, though there was no sound. The air hummed with a strange, vibrating energy, and Graves instinctively felt a rush of heat crawl up his neck. Something was wrong. The leader of these strange figures, the one who had spoken through the calms before, moved forward, its figure tall and imposing. It looked human, but not quite. The armor was sleek, alien, and almost ethereal. Graves tensed. The air around the figure pulsed with power. We warned you, Graves, The figure's voice echoed in his helmet, as though the words were spoken directly into his mind. You have awoken what was never meant to be, Graves tightened his grip on his rifle. He wasn't backing down now. What the hell do you want from us? The figure's gaze was cold, emotionless, but its next words sent a chill through his spine. We have waited, Graves. You have unleashed the force that will tear your world apart. The Syndar are nothing. The Council is nothing. You have awakened the true enemy, Graves' mind raced. The true enemy? Who were they talking about? He had only just begun to understand the stakes of this war, but it was clear now, this wasn't just a fight for Earth. It was a fight for the survival of the galaxy itself. And then, in an instant, the world seemed to collapse around him. A massive shockwave ripped through the battlefield, knocking Graves off his feet. The ground buckled beneath him, and the air was filled with the deafening roar of something enormous descending from the sky. The Syndar forces had been thrown into disarray, but the real enemy wasn't in front of them anymore. It was above them. The sky split open as an enormous ship, far larger than any Syndar or human vessel, pierced through the clouds. Its hull was a dark, sleek shape that defied all logic, and its engines pulsed with a strange, otherworldly energy. Graves barely had time to process the sight before the new alien force raised their weapons in unison, and the ship fired. A blinding beam of energy shot down, vaporizing a good portion of the Syndar forces in an instant. Graves could only watch in stunned silence as the landscape below was consumed by the blast. "Get up!" Lawson screamed through the comms, his voice strained. "Graves, we need to move! Now!" Graves forced himself to his feet, his helmet spinning to take in the scene. His team was still fighting, still trying to push forward. The Syndar were now in full retreat, their forces scattered and broken. But there was no time for celebration. The real battle had just begun. "We're not done yet," Graves muttered, his voice barely audible over the din of the chaos. He turned toward the figure that had been watching them. "Tell me what happens next." The figure's gaze met his, its voice now a low whisper. The true war begins, Graves. And you will be its catalyst, Graves clenched his fist. "Let's see what kind of war you've started then." As the first wave of reinforcements landed, Graves knew that the game had changed. Humanity had awoken something far greater than they could have ever anticipated. And now, the true fight for survival began. Graves didn't have time to savor his victory. The explosions had barely stopped ringing in the air when the second wave hit, stronger, faster, and with more firepower than he could have imagined. His helmet's HUD flashed with warning indicators as more Syndar ships entered Earth's atmosphere, their sleek forms descending like vultures ready to claim what was left of the human resistance. "We're not done yet, Graves muttered under his breath. He wiped the blood from his face, reloading his rifle in one fluid motion. The initial victory had been sweet, but now the real battle had begun. "Graves, we need to fall back." Lieutenant Lawson's voice crackled through the comms. "Our forces are overwhelmed. The Syndar aren't retreating, they're pushing forward with everything they've got." Graves surveyed the battlefield. The remaining human forces were struggling to hold the line, retreating to regroup at what remained of their makeshift defenses. But the Syndar weren't interested in mercy. They weren't interested in capturing Earth. They were here to eradicate humanity once and for all. "Not yet," Graves growled, his eyes narrowing. "Hold your ground. I'm not letting them win." "Not today!" Graves sprinted forward, moving through the remnants of the city's broken streets, the ruins a testament to the brutal war that had raged on for weeks. His heart pounded with adrenaline as he neared the center of the human defensive line. His squad had been scattered, but his mission was far from over. There was still hope. If he could take out the Syndar command center, he could shift the odds back in humanity's favor. He dropped to one knee behind a concrete barrier, scanning the area through his rifle's scope. The Syndar forces had regrouped, but they were disorganized, struggling to maintain their positions after Graves' earlier strike. The chaos was in their favor, but it wasn't enough. They needed a final blow. "Lawson," Graves whispered into his comms. "We need an extraction point. Now." "I've already got it set up," Lawson replied, his voice tense. "But we need to hold on for a few more minutes. They've got heavy artillery moving in." Graves clenched his jaw. He didn't have a few minutes. The Syndar were closing in, and the human resistance was faltering. "Make it fast. We don't have time for waiting." He stood, moving into the heart of the battle. The streets were choked with smoke, the air thick with the scent of burning metal and charred earth. The sound of gunfire rang in his ears as his squad engaged the Syndar forces head-on. Graves pushed forward, cutting through their ranks with brutal precision. "Keep moving!" Graves shouted, taking down another Syndar soldier with a well-placed shot. "We're not stopping until they're on the run!" The human resistance surged forward, a new energy filling their ranks. For the first time in what felt like ages, they weren't retreating. They were fighting back. Graves could feel it, an unspoken understanding between him and the soldiers around him. They would die before they let Earth fall. As the fighting intensified, Graves reached the center of the Syndar command post. A towering structure of alien technology loomed before him, its dark, sleek surface pulsating with energy. He could hear the sounds of enemy soldiers moving inside, their voices muffled through the walls. He didn't hesitate. He kicked down the door, storming inside. The first Syndar soldier that appeared in his line of sight fell before he could even raise his weapon. Graves moved like a force of nature, his every action calculated, each step a move toward victory. He reached the central control room, barely a room, more like a command nexus of swirling holograms and alien tech. At the center of it all stood Kar, his towering form barely fitting within the narrow confines of the chamber. The Syndar commander grinned, his fangs sharp, his voice mocking. So, the human finally arrives, Kar sneered. You think you've won? You think this will be your victory? You're nothing compared to what's coming, Graves didn't flinch. He raised his rifle, the barrel aimed squarely at Kar's chest. You're not the threat anymore, Kar, he said, his voice low and deadly. It's the people who've been watching us. The real enemies, Kar's grin faltered, his eyes narrowing with confusion. What are you talking about, Before Graves could respond, the sound of an engine's roar filled the air, drowning out all other noise. A massive ship, larger than anything Graves had ever seen, broke through the atmosphere, casting a shadow over the battlefield. The earth trembled beneath him as the ship descended, its sleek black hull gleaming in the sunlight. Graves' blood ran cold. It was the same ship Graves had seen earlier, the one that wasn't Syndar. The door to the command room opened with a hiss, and a figure stepped forward, a being so tall it barely fit through the threshold. Its armor was flawless, reflective black with red accents that seemed to glow with an internal energy. The figure's face was obscured by a helmet, but Graves could feel its presence, its power. You were never meant to be here, The figure's voice echoed through the chamber, its tone chilling, filled with centuries of command. Humanity was never supposed to know. Now you've unleashed something far worse than the Syndar, Graves felt his heart sink. Who are you, he demanded, his rifle still raised but feeling insignificant in front of this new enemy. The figure didn't respond immediately. It simply stepped forward, raising a hand toward Kar. The Syndar commander flinched, and Graves could sense the fear in his eyes. This wasn't just another alien species, it was something ancient, something the Syndar had feared but kept hidden. We are the ones who watch, the figure said, its voice now a deep, resonating hum. The Syndar are but tools. You, Graves, have awakened what should have remained dormant. The true war begins now, Asterisk. Graves' stomach dropped. He was no longer facing a battle for survival. He was facing a war for the future of the galaxy. This wasn't just about Earth anymore. It was about humanity's place in the universe, and whatever these beings had planned, humanity wasn't prepared. Kar was trembling, his weapon now discarded at his feet. The ones who watched turned its attention to Graves, and for the first time in a long while, Graves felt small. But that was not something he could afford to feel right now. Asterisk, we don't back down, asterisk, Graves whispered, his eyes locked on the alien before him. Asterisk, not now. Not ever, asterisk. The figure tilted its head, almost as if amused. Asterisk, then let the games begin, human, asterisk. And just like that, the ground shifted beneath Graves' feet. What had begun as a battle for survival had become a war of unimaginable scale, and humanity was about to face its greatest challenge.